I think also it's all about balance, right? So you want to eat what makes you feel your best as well, right? So enjoy the treats, but like make sure you're eating like good protein, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains. Like if it's balanced and 80% of the time you're eating healthy to make yourself feel your best, then go for it. Have that piece of cake, have that ice cream. Like enjoy it once in a while. It's all about balance.
The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
You know what? Usually it's pulling teeth to get people to sit in the front, and I see we're not having that problem today, so, applause for everyone for doing that. Yeah.
Nice to see familiar faces. That's why maybe.
Yeah. No one showed up to support me, though, over here.
I'm here to support you.
So I had a list of questions prepared, but back in the green room, I think we got sidetracked talking about Scarborough and Mississauga and just you growing up in the GTA, moving all around the place. Before we go into the questions, can you kind of talk about your upbringing, all the places in the GTA where you lived? Because as soon as you brought up that you lived in Scarborough, North York, Richmond Hill, we automatically went to restaurants.
Yeah, for sure.
So start with where you grew up.
So I grew up in, actually Etobicoke I was born, but then we moved to Scarborough when I was very, very young. So those are kind of my first memories. But we eat strictly halal. So growing up, there weren't a lot of halal restaurants. So there was like Popeyes, which we would go to, like, those are like the few. We had like a lot of like Indian grocery shops we'd go to get our halal meat. There was a place called Suki's that we'd go and get donairs. So it was a lot about just going grocery shopping with my mom and, getting all her, South Asian groceries and things like that. But after we moved around a little bit and when we moved to Richmond Hill, then there were a lot more halal restaurants. And it was so exciting to try out like a new burger joint or like a new pizza place, a new fried chicken place that had halal. So now our options are endless. I feel like Toronto has one of the best halal food scenes in the world, I would say. It's pretty good.
I'm sure when we get to the Q&As, that's when you can kind of like
my
have your
favorite
your little top 10 list, because I'm sure people are going to be like, Scarborough, Mississauga, like give me your favorite ones. Okay. But first of all, I wanted to ask you about your relationship with food as a kid. Like, did you cook a lot from your family? Were they encouraging you to be in the kitchen, or were they like, get out of my way, like, don't be in here? Like, did you, like, what was your relationship with food growing up?
So food was like the center of our household. I feel like, so my parents moved here from Kenya in the 70s. I was born in the 80s, and food was kind of the center of our life. Like my parents both worked from home, so I'd come home from school. My mom was cooking dinner. My grandmother lived with us as well. So I would see them like peeling garlic and ginger and making these chutneys and making these different pickles and fresh food every day. I was very, very lucky to have that. And I joke, like as a lot of us immigrant children, like our parents have probably never said, I love you, but you knew it because there was fresh food at home when you came. They'd make your favorite dish. You're sick, they make you their concoction of what they know of what, your turmeric milk and your honey and hardar, which is like honey and turmeric. So food was really central to growing up. As I got older, I did play in the kitchen a little bit. It was really hard to learn from my mom because it's like, do. I'm like, what'd you do? She's cooking like 5 things at once. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's happening. But she would actually like one day a week, she would like literally leave the kitchen and it would be my job to cook. So like that way she wouldn't be watching over me. She's like, whatever you cook, then once you leave the kitchen, make sure it's clean and then we eat whatever. So that's when I would actually like step away from more of like the traditional foods. I'd make like pastas and pizzas and things like that. But I love that she gave me the opportunity to just experiment and play around. And funny enough, now with my background in fitness, my job every day for, growing up was to make the salad. That's what I did every single day. And I think that's inspired me to change. And that was the same salad for like 15 years. So that's why I feel like in my cookbook I have a lot of varieties of salads.
Yeah, now as a child of the 80s, I feel like we have some sort of like kinship
for
sorts
sure.
as fellow millennials. I don't know about you, but I think growing up in like the late 80s and early 90s, you see commercials for like McDonald's, pizza pockets and stuff like that. I was telling my parents, I want that. I don't want what you're cooking at home. I don't want Chinese food. Did you feel pressure to kind of assimilate to like the Western culture and kind of shun your heritage cooking?
I think so. Like I actually have always loved like my traditional foods, like from the curries to the rotis to like all the different things. But it was when I was at school, I'm like, okay, I don't want like rice and curry when I go to school, or, and it's funny because now my kids are like, they open up and their friends are like, you have curry, you're so lucky. Like, it's very different now. But I wanted the Nutella sandwich. I wanted the little mini pizzas. I wanted what are they called? The Lunchables, right? Like, I wanted that stuff, and I was like, my mom's
They were
like,
disgusting,
yeah, I know.
but I wanted them so bad.
Well, yeah, and my mom's like, what's Lunchables? I'm making you fresh, and I was like, I didn't really. But what changed was growing up, I had three of my best friends Canadian, and they would come to my house, and I thought they're like, it smells so good in here. We love your mom's cooking. So that really helped me change my perspective, because they, they would come and she'd make fresh roti for them, samosa, she'd make kebabs, and they loved it. They're like, Auntie, we love your food. So that really helped me change my perspective of my cultural food is actually really good.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bit of irony in that, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to assimilate and to appeal to this, demographic, but in turn they're like, no, wait, what you're doing is really good.
Yeah.
Keep doing that.
Keep doing that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, kind of going into the book, how would you? Because we love categorizing things and putting labels on things. How would you describe this book?
So this book is a mix. I often describe it if you came and stayed with me for a week, this is the range you'd get, right? Again, I love the traditional foods. You'll get rice and curry. You'll get a biryani. You'll get some bhajia, which is a kind of similar to a falafel. But we've traveled a lot, so you'll get a chicken souvlaki. You'll get chia seed pudding, because I love that. And so it's really a range of different things. It's kind of I think we were talking as immigrant children. You have you really want to hold on to those traditions, but there's also new things that you've been exposed to, and you want to incorporate those into your dishes as well. So it's really a range. I want to hold on to those traditions. I really am glad I got some of my mom's recipes in here, but also things that, as my kids, I'm very lucky, they love eating, and so as I'm cooking foods for them and different, trying different things, I wanted to include those in there as well.
Because I think we were talking in the green room, I was saying that as I was going through the recipes, I feel like it's a very Toronto cookbook in that you incorporate the heritage cuisines, the stuff that you learned from your mom and grandmother, but also the stuff that kind of just naturally trickled in growing up, and just eating at the plazas in the malls and stuff like that you can't help but take influences from, because those are the flavors that you're used to. And they're kind of just
and even my husband and I, we love traveling, and so it's I tried the halal guy's cart in New York, and I was like, let me try and recreate that. So there's recipes that I didn't grow up with traditionally, but that are still in there as well, based on our travels, and again, the food scene in Toronto, being exposed to all those different types of cuisine really has shaped it.
Yeah, I think there was one recipe in here that really encapsulates that, and that's the butter chicken pizza. In that, do we have any butter chicken pizza fans? Don't be shy. Okay, that lady, she was like, yes. Nice scarf, by the way. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like that's a wonderfully Toronto thing. Because I think during the pandemic, the Desi pizza was a big thing in Brampton, and this just reminded me of that. Of this really fun cultural mashup.
A mix, right?
Yeah, that's kind of only in Toronto thing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Brampton, sorry.
GTA.
Yeah, GTA.
So, we've had pizza joints, halal pizza joints that will have tandoori chicken on pizza and things like that. But this butter chicken pizza came about. My son Ahmed, who's over there, he is butter chicken lover, and so when you have leftover butter chicken, what do? Right, something quick and easy. So we took a naan, mixed the butter. So it's a lot more saucier than your regular pizza. So it's mixed with the butter chicken and the butter chicken sauce with a little bit of tomato sauce, and then put that on a pizza. On a pita, throw some mozzarella on it, and boom. It's something that's super quick. It just helps your leftovers last a little bit longer, gives them new life, and it's so easy that your kids can make.
Yeah, and then on the topic of spices, you kind of brought the
the spice, which I think we'll pass.
Yeah,
around.
It's a very interactive talk. It wasn't advertised, but here we are. So what did you bring?
So this is called a masala daba, and I'd like to know how many of you guys have one at home or have seen one? Yes, I knew it. It's very common. You grow up, most South Asian households have that, and I think that again, having that piece of like your culture. Like it's really nice to have that. When I got married, I was like, Mom, can I take yours? She's like, no, but I'll get you your own. And it's something
She's
I
still
use.
cooking.
I know. True. So, but yeah, so it's something that she like gifted me, and I've had it and use it every day. And it's something like I love seeing my kids use it. I love that it's something that I'll pass on to them. And I really feel like it's such a beautiful thing to have in your kitchen. First of all, it's so aesthetic, and it's actually so practical because you open it up. It's the spices you use commonly. You just put that in your curries, which a lot of times it's a lot of the same spices.
Yeah, it's like a mise en place, but like contained.
Exactly, for spices. Yeah.
So, what kind of spices do you have in there? Or are we making people guess?
Oh, should we have people guess?
A lot of nervous laughter in there.
So you'll always see like turmeric in it. You'll see chili powder. And it's funny because people do it differently. So my mom has a separate one for whole spices, and then she has a separate one for all her ground spices. So it also depends like how you cook, right? So for me, I don't cook as much as her in that sense. So like I'll have like cumin seeds, and then I'll have ground cumin, ground coriander. Sometimes you'll put like your garam masala in there as well. So it really depends on what spice, like salt, whatever spices you use up the most.
Do you judge people when you see their...
No judgment.
You're like, oh, you're using this.
I know.
I would have done something else.
Well, even that, like some people won't put like a garam masala because it's a lot more potent. So they feel like garam masala should be in its own little container, and then the other spices. So everyone has like a little different twist on it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of different twists, what would go into your garam masala?
Well, to be honest, I usually buy mine or take it from my mom. So, but it's like a bunch of whole spices. There's cinnamon, there's cumin, there's a bunch of different spices in there. Yeah.
But you know what I like to do when I make popcorn at home? Garam masala.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never tried that.
Any like spice.
Yeah.
Like,
Just to
blend or
like
whatever?
flavor it a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Sometimes if I want something sweet, like the chai, that will work too.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Well, there's like cinnamon in garam masala, so maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then baking too. It's just so much more interesting than just plain cinnamon.
Like to change it up a little bit. Yeah.
Sorry.
Awesome.
A little bit of a sidetrack there, but
that's
this is
okay.
what happens when you
Yeah,
get
that's
two
the beauty
like,
of Toronto
food
cooking,
people
right? I think,
in there. Now, you have a cookbook, but I think fitness is also a big part of your career. And just looking at the book and looking at your social media feeds, you have fitness tips and like healthy eating tips. I think now, a lot of times it gets conflated with the idea of wellness. What is your definition of wellness? Because I feel like that term kind of just lost like meaning in like the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
I think I got a press release for like a vape company that used the word wellness in there. I'm like, all right, we've jumped the shark on this
we've
one.
gone too far.
Yeah. So if someone asked you, like, how would you define wellness?
I would say wellness is, for me, like, and it's changed throughout the years. Like, I've been a trainer. What I thought wellness was in my 20s is very different in my 40s as a mom of two. And, I think of it as, like, something that is sustainable, right? So if you are doing hard fitness, even the book, like, there was, like, do we go, like, fitness and calories and macros, or do we do just, like a wholesome cookbook, right? And so for me, I really feel that fitness is something that should be, it should be weaved in your life throughout everything you do. So looking at my parents, they're in their 80s. Since I can remember, they walk every day. My dad swims in every day, right? But you wouldn't maybe consider them as being like wellness, like working out, lifting weights, but they've weaved wellness into and wellness is community, wellness is faith, wellness is, family, right? So I think that, even though like a lot of people think, oh, there's certain foods that aren't healthy, but the fact that you're cooking it at home and you know what's going into it, that's a lot better than, not knowing and getting like takeout all the time or getting something that's a little bit more processed. So I think it's about sustainability. It's about what makes you feel your best as well.
Yeah, I think that kind of a good segue into my question of how do you approach healthy eating, but also, as someone who is on Instagram and stuff like that, how do you maintain healthy eating, but also keeping like a healthy body image and sense of self? Because I don't know about you, like 10 minutes on Instagram, I'm like,
you can feel horrible. And also confusing. Do I have the eggs? Do I have protein? Is milk good? Is milk bad? Like, it's so confusing.
How do you strike that as a, as
it's hard.
fellow millennial that's survived the early 2000s like diet culture? Like, how do you kind of walk that balance?
Yeah, I think again it comes from like just seeing what my mom ate growing up, what we grew up like. it was very, like you cooked a lot of your own food. You used a lot of you knew what was going into your food. I think also it's all about balance, right? So you want to eat what makes you feel your best as well, right? So enjoy the treats, but make sure you're eating good protein, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains. If it's balanced and 80% of the time you're eating healthy to make yourself feel your best, then go for it. Have that piece of cake, have that ice cream. Enjoy it once in a while. It's all about balance.
Yeah, and I think that just looking at the recipes, a lot of the more traditional recipes that you learn from your parents, they're just inherently healthy. They're very legume
Yes, exactly.
heavy.
Yeah.
Instead of frying or adding a lot of salt, you just use spices.
Yeah,
kind of thing. It's just going old school.
Yeah,
rather
exactly.
than trying to reinvent the wheel.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's not about overcomplicating things, right? It's about keeping it simple and, again, what you feel like you can do on a regular basis.
Yeah, and then speaking of, the old school recipes, you were talking about trying to learn things from your mom. What was that process like? Walk me through the trauma of trying to get your mom to teach you how to make a dish.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
Yeah. Is
little bit of this, I get scrap piece of paper, I couldn't even read it with food stains on it. And she's like, yeah, this one was from my sister. And she said a little bit of this, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no order, there's nothing. So most of them I had done. There's one in there, mutia, which is a very, it's a very hearty dish. And I don't think I've ever had mutia with I've never seen anyone make mutia for less than 20 people. You make it and you give it to your loved ones, you have it for days, and it's a lot of because there's so many different ingredients that go into it that it wouldn't make sense to make it for a family.
If you're
for.
making it, you're gonna make it.
And that's when the big silver pot comes out and something's going on. So that was a really tough one because there's a lot of different steps to it. It's a huge stew. You make little dumplings out of millet flour. Everyone makes it a little bit differently. So that was a really, really hard one to get from her because I don't think she has a recipe, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So that was a tough one to get from her.
I mean, what was that process like trying to get measurements when
it
you're
was,
is it a cup or a teaspoon?
No,
So she'll be like this much.
Well, it's this, and I would measure it, and then she's very I'm sure if you a lot of very impatient. It's why are you I need to finish this, So she would, and then when I'm not looking, she'd go in and add a little. I'm like, wait, what did you just add? She goes, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, no, I need to know every last step. So a lot of it's okay, a little bit of this. So it was a lot of filming. I actually filmed her doing it so that I could go back and see kind of what she was adding and stuff.
Yeah.
It was that one was the hardest one. Yeah.
And I'm assuming she's had your version.
Yeah. But even, as much as I love cooking, but even my kids, they'll be like, Nanima made this. I'm like, what? How do you know the difference between but it is, I don't know, there's something special in their hands or something. It will always taste better when it's made by them, especially if it's their recipe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you, because I've definitely tried to learn recipes from my mom and grandma who, their measuring spoon is a literal spoon.
Yeah. Or she'll say a cup, but then our actual measuring cup is different than, it's the cup we use at
A
home.
mug.
That's the cup. Yeah, a mug.
It's a mug, and
exactly.
how long do I cook this for? You just look at it. You'll look at it.
So there's a word. I don't even know if it's maybe I don't know if it's an Arabic word. It's qiyas.
Yeah.
What is that? Is it Arabic? I don't know. Just. Yeah, so there you go. She's like, yes. I'm like, what? I know it means just a little bit, and you're like, okay.
But I do find that so much of those recipes, so much of it is about feeling and repetition, and not necessarily about precise measurements.
Yes.
So sometimes, this batch of spices is stronger than the last batch, or sometimes the chicken is, bigger or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that, recipes is a great starting point just to give you the guidelines of where it is. And then from there, I think, and this is what I do with a lot of cookbooks, I'll cook exactly what the book says for the first 3 or 4 times. And then as it becomes more muscle memory, I think.
Use it as a starting point.
You use it as a starting point, and I think you can kind of almost instinctually adjust seasoning without thinking.
No, I think even because I share so many of my recipes online, and even when I work with clients and stuff, I really see the gift that my mom gave me of her having no just watching her cook and being little bit you never felt it could go wrong. Do you know what I mean? She'd make a mistake and be like, okay, add a little bit of this. Whereas if I saw her, I think learning from a recipe book, it would be very different. So even developing a lot of these recipes, I'm like, okay, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I don't think I could have written a cookbook like before, but the fact that I shared on social media and people ask me for measurements and people are coming from different cultures being like, what do you mean just a little bit? Like, so I really had to like write things down. I was like, okay, I think I can share these recipes. Like, I need to measure my own, what I'm putting in. But I think that having knowing that there's a little bit of flexibility and you can make a mistake, you can add one thing was you don't have, my mom's like, we don't have this, just substitute it for this, you know what I mean? So knowing that there is a bit of fluidity in your recipes, I think it really does help.
Yeah, but I think that there's this big generation of younger people like us who are trying to take these recipes that were never written down, or it's just chicken scratch on a piece of paper and trying to record it, create a record of some sort just to keep it going.
Keep it. Yeah, exactly. We don't want to lose that, right?
Yeah. I'm sure your mom's recipes are also delicious, but was that also a big impetus of we gotta write this stuff down?
Yeah, 100%. Even just convincing her to be in the book. But was so even that, side note, when we were taking the pictures, we had a food stylist and he was like, your mom is scaring me. And I'm like, why? And he's like, Auntie, it has to be this way for the picture, then we'll fix it. And she's like, what are you doing? Why are you putting it like that? And it was just but it was fun having her hands in every part of it. I think it was really cool to see. And then I think for her to see this finished version and be like, oh, that's my roli, that's my mutia, that's my, leg of lamb. I think it's really nice. And then also including the dal and things that we'd have on a regular Tuesday, but that brings so much nostalgia and so many nice memories. I wanted those, even for my kids to have, and so for younger generations to cook as well.
Yeah, well, I feel with this cookbook and also a lot of cookbooks that are coming out now in the recent years, it's not necessarily just a textbook joy of cooking cookbook. A lot of times it's also a part memoir or a family photo album. When you were writing the book, how much of yourself did you want to put in there versus just recipes, tutorials?
I think it was important to just show representation as well. I think how nice is it to have something that you feel you can identify with that person and that culture and that background, and see recipes that maybe weren't considered delicious, beautifully displayed. That was really important for me. And also every recipe, you have a library, you have a library recipe and you can only pick so many, then each one has to mean something. And again, I love that some of them have, stories from growing up and my mom giving me, and then some of how the kids love some of the recipes that I'm sharing as well. So I love that it's the three generations.
Yeah, what was that planning process like mapping out what recipes you're going to include, what you had to take out, any holes where you're you know what, we need something like that? How much of that what was that planning process like?
Just making sure that there's also good, there was at the beginning it was a lot there were salads and soups, but a lot of the dinners were maybe a bit more meat heavy, so I wanted to include more vegetarian options as well. And I wanted to make sure that each, there was a range of a lazy lasagna and a butter chicken and a karai gos, you know what I mean? So there was a nice range for people who have maybe never tried these recipes. And then also one big thing was if I'm asking you to buy saffron for something, I'm going to show you how to use it in maybe 3 or 4 different recipes, or I'm asking you to buy spices that maybe you've never used before, let's make sure we use it through multiple recipes so you don't feel like you just bought it for that one recipe.
Yeah. Any spice places that you like to go to? I'm sure after smelling there's going to be where did I get this? I
think there's so many South Asian grocery stores that you can get from. I love going to the local ones as if you can. I'm very lucky down the street. We have an uncle who's a halal meat store and an Asian grocery store.
And you got the ultimate hookup.
I'm very lucky. Yeah. So it's literally down the street. I go do my groceries. It's really nice. Yeah.
And then kind of back to the selection process for the recipes. When you were talking to the publishers and your editors, were you basically given carte blanche to put just be whatever you want to include? Yeah,
I was pretty lucky. First the idea was, again, you come to my house, you stay with me for a week, you're going to get a mix of recipes. And that's kind of what we were kind of selling it as. Even with the name, they were okay, what do you think? And I was like, Bismillah. And they were all right. So it was fun, just educating them on what that meant and what that meant to Muslim families. It's very similar to a grace saying, I begin in the name of God, setting with intention. And I was very lucky. My publishers have been fantastic. And I think they were excited to see a mix. They said that, you see traditional East African books and Indian books, but you haven't kind of seen a fusion book, right? That has a mix of everything.
Yeah. And then what I liked is that there are a few dishes in there that I rarely or have never seen in restaurants before. Are there any dishes on there that you included because you're you know what, you probably don't really see this often on menus? Even though our restaurants here are very diverse with whatever regional cuisine, are there any dishes here where you're like, you're not going to find this at a restaurant?
Yeah, like an East African biryani, you probably won't find that. You'll find like the traditional Pakistani biryani, but an East African biryani is like it's different. You won't find it in many restaurants. So that, another one that I included was like, my mom makes this leg of lamb and we love it. And you won't find that in like a restaurant. And so just having that leg of lamb in there was really important. It's like her celebratory like dish.
Yeah. How is East African biryani different from the Pakistani one?
So the Pakistani one is mixed, like the rice and chicken or meat is all mixed, whereas an East African biryani is like the biryani, so the rice is like colored like yellow and red and stuff, and then the curry is like a thick gravy with like potatoes and fried onions and meat, so it's separate, but like you'll serve it with like the rice and then the curry on top. So it's a little bit more of like a saucy. It's so good.
Wow.
It's really good.
Yeah. We're trying to move some copies here, so I think talking about getting people hungry. It's around dinner time right now.
Around dinner time, yeah. And it's actually not that hard to make. That was a fun one I learned from my mom, and I was like, because you always thought it was like only on Eid, then weddings you'd get it, and then when you actually make it, you're like, oh, it's actually not, like there's a lot of steps, but once you make it, it's not that hard,
Were there any that you kind of had to like, there's just no space, like we'll save this for the part 2?
Yeah, there were a few. Okay. But even like the book took 2.5 years, right? So I had to pick all my recipes like 2 years ago. Yeah. So now as I develop more recipes, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll put that in the next book.
I think that's one thing that readers don't really know, just like the long process of putting together a cookbook. Can you talk a little bit about just how much work goes into something like this?
Yeah, for sure. So first there was the idea, and then it's like, okay, is this something that can actually happen? I was very lucky enough to have some friends that just introduced me to the right people that helped me write like a proposal for the book, and then I got a book agent, and you're just kind of like trying to sell your idea, right? And kind of like what you envision for the book. And then through the book agent, that was about 2.5 years ago, and then we got a publisher, which was great. And then that's when the process starts. So it was like the recipes, the manuscript, all that was kind of like pretty much down, like recipe selection, kind of all of that. And then a year into that, we did the photography. Once the photography was done, and even that selecting, like there's somewhere I'm like, oh, I wish there was a picture for every recipe, but you can't do that all the time. And then after the photography, then it kind of goes into like designing the book, developing the book, and then it gets printed, and that takes about like another 6-7 months for it to come back, and it's being shipped, from overseas.
I mean, what about the testing process? Because I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, that must have been a lot of fun. Like, you just cook and your family gets to like
it's stressful when it's going in writing, and it's like, even now I'm like waiting for someone to be like, I think this was wrong, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. So it's stressful because that's being in print, you can't change it. So I was very lucky to have a community. We sent it out. We had 50 recipe testers. Actually, all their names are in the cookbook as well, which was really nice. So people giving feedback on like cooking times, or try this, is this too spicy? I don't know, I like spicy food. Does that mean everybody has the same level of spiciness? So it was nice to have recipe testers, and a lot of these recipes I have, developed over many, many years. So I have my own similar version of my mom's cookbook with my chicken scratch writing and things like that. Yeah. So having it from there as well.
Yeah, I mean, how intense was that process of, testing the recipes, developing the recipes? Was there ever a night where you're like, I just want, I need a night off. Like, I'm just going to order a pizza.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I think, again, because the process was long and I got to do like a few at a time, so I tried to batch it and not make it seem so overwhelming. Yeah.
And then, kind of going back to the fitness side of your career, like, what are some of your favorite, go-to exercises or ways to kind of keep active?
So I love walking. If you follow me, I love walking. It's good for you. You get out in nature. In Toronto, you got to bundle up. It's getting colder. But for me, it's like mental clarity. It's like, how I really just like process ideas and go through that. I love strength training. It's so important. And I have like a coaching program, and it's something I really get women to do. Strengthening is so important. Building muscle really helps with bone density, just everything.
How many times has someone come up to you and be like, I just want to tone.
I know. How do I lose this? That's what I get.
I don't want to lift because I'm going to
bulk up.
I don't want 17-inch biceps.
Yeah. I'll say, I do get that a lot. but yeah, I think it's about education too. Like, that's where you're talking about wellness. Like, I really try not to, share look this way. This is like the idea of fitness is about what feels the best, right? So for me, strength training for myself, with all the research I've done and with like training with so many women, strength training is so important. And so I would just say, like, don't think about that. Like, your body needs to build muscle. You need muscle as you age, right? And you know, like those bodybuilders that have, what did you say, 17-inch biceps, they work really hard to get there. So don't worry, you'll be fine. And a little bit of it looks good on you. It feels good.
Well, and then as we get kind of colder, like, do you have any favorite wintertime activities to kind of stay active?
Again, walking. Like, just get a really good pair of boots, a good pair of long johns. Like, it's so important to get out and get some sunlight, get some fresh air. It's really, really important. Like, don't use the excuse of it being cold. As you know, even if you can get to a gym, get to a pool, something, just keep up with your activity. It's so important. Even if it's a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot, but every day try and do something to be active.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Have you, were there any other activities that you were like, I'm going to give this a try, but then it's just like, it's not for me?
Well, I love sports. That's another thing if you love sports. So I play volleyball. Actually, just telling my husband, I'm like, we should play paddle. I want to, like, we've played it a couple of times, so I'm always up for trying something new. But volleyball is like one of my favorite things, but any sport, like swimming, basketball.
I was going to ask, have you joined like the pickleball cult?
I haven't, but I know a lot of people have. Even our local mosque, they have pickleball every like morning, and on like it's big. So because I play volleyball, I kind of like have to pick and choose, but it's becoming really big. Anything that gets people moving, I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. What attracted you to sport in the beginning? Because I think you wrote here that like in high school and stuff like that, you were like a student athlete.
Yeah. So my brother and sister were always super active, and my dad, he actually in Kenya was like the phys ed teacher at the school. And so that was my dad. Like, I used to run 100 meters. He'd be there with like the stop clock, like checking my 100-meter run, measuring my like running long jump. So he was always super encouraging, both my parents super encouraging of playing sports. And for me, it was something that I was like I don't know if you can tell, I'm a very like antsy, like I like moving and stuff. So it kept me busy, kept me active. I loved it. Like, some of my best friends I have were like from high school basketball, elementary school, volleyball. So it's really like sport has always been such a huge part. Yeah.
And then kind of switching gears back to the food aspect, because I just keep looking at the back of your book, and there's just like gorgeous photos of like smoothies and parfaits and like salads in there. I'm sure this will come up in the audience question, but like, I feel like everyone has their go-to appliances, kitchen gadgets, their ideal kitchen layout. What's your philosophy when it comes to appliances and cooking stuff? Are you kind of like old school? It's like, I'm just going to do it by hands, or you're like, give me like the newest gadgets. I will try it out all the time. Like, give me an air fryer. Give me the Instant Pot.
So a blender for me is key. I love it. Like, even for my marinades, I'll use it for like my smoothies and stuff like that. I find blenders really good, even if I'm like blending up like a sauce and you want it to like thin out. I've become like an Instapot lover.
Okay.
I never thought, like, I'm too scared to use a pressure cooker. My mom used to use one, and I like exploded once when I used it, and so I was very traumatized. But when the Instapot came along, I was like, oh, I can do this, and it like cuts your time. It makes it so much easier. So Instapot, we have an air fryer. I find like it's easy for the kids to use like the air fryer as well. But yeah, like, other than that, a good knife, a good cutting board, good pots and pans. I think those are more important,
The Instant Pot, I saw a lot of people nod when you said like exploding, like...
Well, pressure cooker, right?
Cookers.
Yeah.
I would say it's surprisingly good for risotto.
Instant Pot? Oh, really?
I think that was like the one thing that like surprised me.
Oh.
Yeah.
But like, you have to put it very like little time, right? Because I would picture it burning at the bottom.
It didn't burn.
Oh, I've heard people make cakes. Like, I use it mostly for like my soups and stews and curries and stuff, but I've heard people have like baked cheesecake in it, and so I need to try a few more recipes.
Yeah. And then what about spices? I mean, we've had the...
Yeah.
Are we...
Oh, yeah.
Are there like an answer of like spices, or do people want to guess? Where are we at with that? Is it still being passed around?
It's gone. It's done.
Right, don't steal it. She has to take it back. It's a family heirloom, guys. Like, if you really want one, she'll tell you where to get one.
I know.
Yeah. Like, what were can you, for the people in the audience, I mean, does anyone want to guess, or do you want to
Yeah, so there was like, go for it.
bread? I was like,
Yeah, that was the tandoori powder.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, the one with the
Yeah.
the cumin on top? Okay.
Yeah, I think that got mixed up in transportation, but yeah. So that was like a tandoori powder. So even that, like I'll have a tandoori powder mix, I'll have a garam masala mix, because then sometimes if you want to just do like easy, quick dishes, then that's easy, yeah.
Yeah.
But another one I use a lot that I didn't like is saffron, za'atar, like, so it's nice to kind of mix it up as well and use different spices.
I think we just came up with an idea for a new game show.
Oh,
Just
guess the spice.
guess the spice. Yeah. So is that considered your go-to, like, you get the most use
Yeah,
out of?
yeah, especially if I'm doing like any type of Indian curry or, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any? Yeah, I always ask because like every time I get gifts of like spice jars and stuff like that, I try to use it so hard, but like I'm just like it's not.
Like
It's
you
not
can't
for
use
me.
it up?
I can't use it up.
Yeah.
Has there ever been like a spice or an herb where you're kind of like, I like it in theory, but it's just not part of my culinary palate?
I think it's more like dried rosemary and things like that. I don't use those as much. Like if I'm going to use it, it's for like a big, like a maybe I'm trying something different, but it's not, those aren't the ones that I use every day. So things like that. Like we go through, like I said, there's like za'atar, there's saffron, like those are different spices. Sumac, like I tend to use as well. But yeah, like a rosemary,
Yeah.
like an oregano and stuff like that. as
Do you
much.
use bay leaves often?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and like soups and yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, I think there's a misconception that like bay leaves don't do anything, because I feel like most people get like the dried bay leaves that come with the spice rack.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
like
yeah.
older than you and I
Yeah,
put
that
together.
has no, like, yeah.
So like there's no bay leaves in this room tonight. However, for the people that like me kind of grew up with like what is this like dried
Dried,
thing
yeah.
that like can cut my finger, like what is the purpose of a good bay leaf?
Well, I think I use them like in soups a
Yeah.
lot. I think you can add them to your rice to flavor your rice as well. So yeah, and it's like the difference between, like even we'll use like fenugreek leaves and dried fenugreek leaves. So it depends like on what you want. But yeah, like if it is a dried one, you do want one that still has the flavor in it.
What flavor
For
bay leaf? Like what would
For
it?
bay leaf?
Yeah.
like a cinnamony flavor? Yeah. Oh look, she has extra
Oh, wow.
spices. Like a pepper.
Wait, are those actual bay leaves?
These are bay
Oh
leaves.
my gosh.
And fresh. You have
Oh
to
my
say
God.
they were fresh.
We got some people that have never seen a
Yeah.
fresh one before.
Yeah, it's always dried and crumbled. Yeah.
Okay. And then we only have 5 minutes before we
Okay.
go, because time just
So I
flew.
by. Yeah.
I think backstage we spent a good 20 minutes talking about our favorite places to eat around the city. And as someone, you're from Scarborough, North York, Richmond Hill, like you've hit it all. And then we've also talked a bit about like Mississauga and
Yeah.
being there at like 2 a.m. during Ramadan.
At Ridgeway Plaza.
People know, people know, people know.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Are
That's the
there-
beauty of Toronto. It's like a big city, but it's still very small.
Everyone's, yeah. You were there lining up for that 2 a.m. lining up for a latte at that Yemeni cafe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are there any places like that you love to go to? And I'm sure the audience will,
Yeah, I would
will
love
ask
to
more
hear from the
questions.
audience too. Yeah.
Like off the top of your mind, is there any place in the city where you're like, it's reliable, it's solid, I know where I'm getting there? If someone asks me like where I want to eat tonight, I'm going there.
Oh, that's tough. So there used to be like Lahori Tikka House on Gerrard, right? But I feel like that was like our go-to. We'd go there. But now so many new places have opened up. There's like Karai Boys. There's so many different ones. There's like Restaurant Malaysia in Richmond Hill, which is really good if you haven't been.
Yeah.
There's Sumac, like it's an Iraqi shawarma place. Really, really good shawarma.
I think it was a Keith Lee approved
Yes,
place.
it was. Yeah. I knew it before he went
Yeah.
there. There's also like Sukhothai, so like there are a lot of restaurants that will have like full halal options, which is really nice as well. So you get to try like different cuisines as well. But yeah, you kind of put me on the spot. Those are kind of like the ones I can think of.
Yeah.
But I know there's like a whole you talk like Mississauga Brampton has a whole new like.
We were saying like that's
Yeah.
that's where all like the new like fun stuff.
Yeah.
Like the viral like Dubai chocolate. That's where.
That's where it is.
Yeah, if you see something on Instagram like
It's usually
for like
from-
halal food, like just go to that plaza. And, what's it called again?
Ridgeway.
Ridgeway Plaza. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Everyone's like,
I
we
know,
know,
they're like,
we
we know,
know. I feel like you go there and you'll find it.
And that's, I mean, you will. And the nice thing is that even downtown, like, you'll just see, like, burger joints popping up that are halal. Like, it's really nice to have so many options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, do you see, like, it's just day and night for the food options when you're going out between when you were a kid and, like,
100%.
now?
Yes, for sure. I was just telling my kids the other day, I'm like, after Sunday school, like, we had, like, Popeyes or, like, you know, a donair from, like, Suki's, and that was, like, the only options we had. And now it's, like, the options are endless, like, actually endless.
Yeah.
Like, we never had a steak outside, you know what I mean? Like, you would just eat that food at, like, you know, at home with, like, your mom would throw spices on your steak. You're like, no, I want to have it like normal people have it and really cook it and, like, you know, so it's, like, very nice to be able to experience different things as well. Yeah.
And then I'll wrap this up as we have to go to the audience questions. But if there was a second cookbook,
Yes.
yeah, publishers take note. What are some of the things that you would love to do more of? If there's like a direction you would like to take it, would you want to do, you know, more baking stuff, more like sharing platters kind of things, or like entertaining things, or like, you know?
So I've had a few ideas of a second book. One would be just more of the recipes that I haven't had a chance to share. One is like, so there's a healthy Ramadan guide in the book, and I would love to do like Ramadan around the world. I think that would be really cool to see like how everyone kind of like because Ramadan's when like all the like traditional foods come out, everyone like cooks their favorite meals, and it's really about, like you said, like sharing food and gathering. I would love to see how people from all around the world celebrate Ramadan and like have different foods that they make, and also like even if they are like in a place like Toronto where they've like, you know, where they've moved out of their country of origin or where their parents still want to hold on to those traditions, like what are those things? I think that would be really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining just like hanging out after like the sun goes down and just like seeing like what all the households or like the restaurants are doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even like, so we'll have like, it's called iftar when you break your fast at mosque, and like, you know, you'll like, there'll be people from like different backgrounds, like Iranian or Syrian or Afghani, and it's really nice to see what people, because like they'll always bring out food to share, and it's really cool to see different, like, you know, what different people have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have like a go-to like iftar meal, or it's kind of like,
I think like there's a lot of like the fried foods that come out in Ramadan, like the samosas and the pastries, and like you know, a lot of Pakistanis will do like pakora and different things like that. But I think that's where a lot of the like the foods comes out with, like the appetizers and stuff. And then a lot of times, you know, people just do what they normally do for dinner in Ramadan. Yeah. Unless they have like family over, then they'll make something special.
Okay.